You know, whether it's teaching your children to drive or giving your child's pet a funeral, playing catch with your child, teaching them the birds and the bees or whatever it might be, helping them get over a boyfriend breaking up with them. As you guys know, and as I'm learning, being a parent doesn't happen overnight. It's a day in, day out choice that we make to be there for our children, to show up when they need us to. And even if you don't have children, or your children are all grown up and out of the house, there's still those that you show up for, isn't there? Whether it's your spouse, your friends, your significant other, grandchildren, grandparents, brothers, sisters, co-workers. There's always people in our lives that need us to show up for them. We've been talking about the one another's, God's blueprint for humanity. And up to this point, we've talked about serving and forgiving and honoring and praying and loving and encouraging one another. We talked about how encouraging one another happens by putting all the other one another's into practice, into action. Well, this morning we finish up with our Family 101 series. We finish up with the one another's with being devoted to one another. So your willingness to encourage one another and to put the one another's into action, that is what demonstrates your devotion to one another. In the video, you saw what that devotion looked like. You may even have similar experiences. Now, I will say this. Often videos like this, they show the ideal. You know, what we're striving for. For most of us, I think I can say pretty confidently that life is a bit more messy. And the two passages we read this morning show how this devotion to one another works in the messiness of our lives. We heard two stories about two young men, the prodigal and David, whose stories I think very much exemplify both divine and human devotion. And this morning, I want to take just a closer look at both of these stories. The prodigal, which many of us have heard multiple times, is one of those stories that's very much multi-layered. But it's still focused on three characters: the younger son, the older son, and the father. And this morning, I want to focus mainly on the father. Think for a second about the younger son's request when he goes to the father. He says, "Father, give me my inheritance." Essentially, he's saying to the father, "I wish you were dead." He's saying to the father, "I want your stuff, but not you." See, this kind of request, whether it was back then or even today, I think was seen as very disrespectful. It was highly irregular. Now, moms and dads, many of you, what would you have done if your son or your daughter came up to you and said, "I want my inheritance right now. I want my stuff, but not you"? What would you say to them?
Forget it.
Forget it.
Really?
Really? What else?
There's nothing for you right now.
Nothing for you right now. Yeah.
And nothing later if you keep this up.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, for a son or a daughter to come up and make that request, to say that to you, I mean, it's essentially they're not showing you any respect, any loyalty, any love. And more than anything else, they're not showing you any sense of devotion. And it would be easy in those situations as a parent to disown that child, to disrespect them, to say, "You've got to be kidding me, you're out of your mind." You know, to create and lead to this place of great conflict. And that happens a lot. I mean, how many of us know someone who is, disconnected from their family because of some conflict that came up? Or because of something that was said, either that was misunderstood or it was disrespectful. So it's easy to put ourselves in the father and mother's position in this story, at least to start with. Although Interestingly, the father, what does he do? He gives him his inheritance. Then it gets a little harder to put ourselves in those shoes. And we know the story. The son went out. He spent all the money, basically wasted the inheritance away, decides to return. And this is, I think, the most amazing part of the story. Many of us, I think, if we saw our son returning after basically wishing we were dead, we would maybe have a hard time accepting him back. Our first response would not be what the father in the story did. What did the father do? He was filled with compassion, the Bible says. It says the father ran and he put his arms around his son and he kissed him, which was a serious act of love. Not only that, but then the father dressed him in the best robe, in the best jewelry, the best sandals. Then they celebrated the son's return by killing the best fattened calf. Seems like a highly irregular response to a highly irregular request. The father is literally showering the son who wanted him dead, with the best that he had to offer. And for no other reason than to simply celebrate the son's return. That's what we call grace. Now, who is the father and who is the son really in this passage?
God in us.
Yes. God is the father. The son is all of us. Actually, we represent probably both sons. See, this parable reflects God's devotion to us. See, no matter how much we struggle with our devotion to God, even if we turn our back on God or wish that God was dead, or even if we make outrageous requests of God, God's devotion to us never wavers. God's love for us never wavers. Now, the story of Jonathan and David, that's a bit more complicated. To give you some background so you know where we're at in the story, David had just defeated Goliath, with the slingshot and the stone. And we're told that David was beloved as a result of this by everyone in the kingdom, including King Saul and his son Jonathan. We're told that Saul essentially adopts David as a son, and that he eventually puts him in charge of the entire army. Now, what Saul doesn't know that we do is that David is the one that's to replace him as king. It's already been decided by God. And that his own son, Jonathan, will play a role in that. Now, take a second. Think about your best friend. Think about the person that you are closest to. How do you know that they are your best friend and that you are theirs? I'm not asking like in a middle school or high school sense here, although that could be part of it. How do you know that they are your best friend?
The one that's always there for you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we know because they're always there for us. They listen to us. Even when we're whining and complaining. They accept us for who we are. They don't judge us. They love us. Well, for David and Jonathan, this relationship that they had, it went deeper than best friends, or deeper than being married, say, for 70 years. 1 Samuel says that Jonathan's soul was bound to the soul of David. And it didn't say it just once, it said it 3 times. 3 times. Now, in Hebrew, the word soul means the essential life of a person, the whole being of a person. So Jonathan's love for David really was no different or distinguishable. It was indistinguishable from his love for himself. See, Jonathan shows his love for David, I think, in a very similar fashion as the prodigal's father, too. You remember the story, Jonathan gave David what? His robe, his armor, his sword, his bow, even his belt. Now, interestingly, the robe that Jonathan gave David symbolizes the kingdom. Jonathan was the heir, was Saul's heir. But by passing that robe, he was saying to David, you are now the heir to my kingdom. In other words, Jonathan was devoting himself to David for the long haul. He was casting his future, his lot, with David. I think Jonathan and this is why I love this story, is a great example of what being devoted to one another looks like. Now, there are some common themes between these two stories that I think will help us to see kind of what this devotion to one another really looks like. The first is we have to give our best to one another. Okay? Think about what the father and Jonathan gave up. They gave up the best of what they had. The clothes, the fat calf, the jewelry, their weaponry, the kingdom. They gave up their best. So the question that I have for you is what does our best look like? And have we given it to those that we love? So what does your best look like, and have you given it to those that you love? For many of us, that's our time, that's our energy, that's our priorities, that's our gifts. See, to give our best, we must sacrifice our best. In the case of the father, that was the fattened calf. With Jonathan, that was his kingdom. What does that best look like for us? The second common theme is that when we devote ourselves to one another, we cast our future with one another. Think about the father's legacy and the son casting him on the father's mercy. Think about Jonathan putting his entire lot, everything that he had, with David. Have we committed our future to those that we love? Have we cast our lot with those that we love? See, accepting and loving one another and trusting that they will do the same, that's what it means to cast our lot with one another. And that means for richer or poorer, good times or bad times, in sickness and in health, till death do us part. To use the wedding vows. That's what it means to cast our lot, to cast our future with another person, with those that we love. Now, in our culture, giving our best and committing our future to one another, or to those that we love, it is often contingent upon the other person's willingness to do the same for us, isn't it? And that brings me to the last common theme. There are no contingencies on God's devotion to us. And there shouldn't be any contingencies on our devotion to one another. Now you may be thinking, and I was thinking the same thing as I was writing this week, that that's an easy thing to say. But it's a lot more difficult to put into practice. In fact, how do we put that into practice? To start, we have to cast our entire life, our entire future in with God. From there, we have to give nothing but our best to God. See, it's only then that we can cast our future and give our best to others. It's only when we're completely devoted to God that we can be completely devoted to others. That doesn't mean that there won't be stumbles and falls. Okay, the prodigal is a perfect example that there will be. But it means to follow God's example and to do our best to remain and show our devotion to others. That's why I think it's very important that we be very careful who we devote ourselves to, who we cast our lot with. You know, like Jonathan and David, we're giving our life to another. We're trusting that person with our lives. You know, this isn't exactly like on the battlefield. When we're devoted to someone, we give our lives to someone, we're trusting them with our emotions, with our thoughts, with our weaknesses, with our faults. We're trusting them with our baggage, with our joys and our sorrows. And we're trusting them with more than anything else, our future happiness. And that kind of devotion requires, I think, the deepest of connections. The kind that Jonathan had with David. The kind that God wants for each and every one of us. Oftentimes, when I do premarital counseling, this kind of theme of being very careful who we cast our lot with comes up. When I work with a couple, and again, this is marital or premarital, one of the things I always ask is, why did you decide to get married? Or why are you deciding to get married? And I am looking for kind of a specific answer. And when I hear the answer, well, you know, we're just so in love, we decided it was the right time, and you kind of see the hearts that are floating up over their head and nodding, and all of that, that really concerns me, needless to say. Because there is these different kind of phases of love that we go through, and eventually that kind of infatuation love with the little hearts, it wears off. And so when I ask couples that question, the answer that I'm looking for is something along the lines of, well, we are compatible. We have a lot in common. We're devoted to each other. We try to encourage one another. We communicate well. I mean, in other words, they have a friendship. They can honestly say to one another, this person that I'm getting ready to marry is potentially my best friend. Love is hugely important, but love grows and it changes and it evolves. That friendship is maybe the most important thing you need when you get married. And the other thing I will say too about that, and this goes back again to the devoting to one another thing, is there a respect for one another? Is there an acceptance of one another? And what does that look like? See, I believe that we have a responsibility in our relationships to serve, to forgive, to pray, to honor, to love, to encourage, and that those individuals have the same responsibility to you. Every morning when I walk into our nursery, Hildy's lying in bed and she's awake and she looks up and smiles at us, which is most mornings, not every morning. And I'm willing to bet that's going to change as years go by. But when I see that smile, to me that reflects her devotion that she has in her mom and I. That she knows that we're there to love her, that we will provide for her, that we will care for her, that we will guide her. And so in that smile, as I receive it, I receive kind of that responsibility that goes with it. And I know that I have that responsibility. See, our love, our provision, our care, our guidance, those are things that when we're in a relationship with somebody that it may not be an expectation, but it's something you shouldn't feel obligated to give either. You should want to. This is why, folks, that being devoted to one another is our last one another. See, you can't understand true devotion until you understand the rest of those one another's. Okay? And to be fair, this is the one another that's not directly on the blueprint, but it's definitely a part of it. I think being devoted to one another is the personal touch. For example, that takes a house and makes it a home. It's one of those things where, it's where your child took the first step. It's remembering what happened in a certain room. It's the table where something awful was shared that ultimately brought you closer together. It's the couch, maybe where you watch movies together. It's those memories that you create together. Because those memories equate to the devotion that you have to one another. So if you don't care about one another, you're going to waste your time making memories with them. So that's the image that I get when I think of being devoted to one another. This idea of making a house a home. See, to be devoted to one another is to share your life with one another. And again, that starts with devoting ourselves to God. You remember what I've been kind of saying throughout this series, that stronger, healthier individuals equal stronger, healthier families, which equals stronger, healthier communities, and so on and so forth. Now, I'm not asking or expecting that you'll care a great deal about your community first before you care about your family, and that's the point. I would hope that we would all want healthy families. So, to close this morning, we've been talking about prodigal and then Jonathan and David, and how these stories reflect how God is devoted to us and how we are devoted to one another. I want you to take a second and ask yourself this question. We kind of hit on it earlier. How devoted is God to you? How devoted is God to you? God sent Jesus, who gave his life, who surrendered all for us. Paul, in implies in Ephesians that God's love and devotion have no boundaries. And even if we try to test those boundaries, we'll find that there's no limits. See, this is why God's devotion to you allows you to surrender to God. See, when you surrender to God, and God is going to guide you and lead you in surrendering to others. And that's the rub, folks. We can't surrender. We can't surrender to another by ourselves. We need God to lead the way. Now, the last takeaway I want to give you is I believe that the desire, the hunger, exists in all of us, in every single one of us, to devote ourselves to one another. But to have those kind of trusting and intimate relationships where we can let our guard down, where we can open up and know that we'll be accepted and loved, those are the kind of relationships I believe that we're hungry for. I also believe that those kind of relationships are possible, and that they start at home, in the family, in both word and in action. Now, men, I want to speak to you for just a minute. Traditionally, men, you have been devoted to providing for the physical needs of your family, right? Money for food, clothing, shelter, things like that. But in our culture now, we all know this, not all men are husbands or fathers. Some are stay-at-home dads or caretakers. Some are caretakers of a parent, I should say. Some are friends. And this helps us to see that showing devotion is more than just providing for physical needs. Men, we're also emotional and spiritual beings as well. And what you can do to help show your devotion to others, men, is to take notice of the special gifts, the talents, the achievements of those that you're devoted to, and praise them, encourage them, and then be a part of their lives by being in their lives. As a youth pastor, I was always told one of the most important things you can do is attend the events of your youth. And that is so true. Or to take them out for coffee, show them that you're invested in their lives. That's what being devoted to one another is you're investing in somebody else's life. One other important note then that I want to give you is oftentimes our impression of God can be heavily influenced by our earthly, or by our impressions of our earthly fathers. Okay? So if you or someone you know is standoffish or angry or an absentee father, think about how that's going to influence a child or someone else's view of God. I heard a story about I actually read this in a book, but it was a true story, about a young woman who came to church, and she was hearing God referred to as a male. Well, it turns out that she had been abused. And I can't remember if it was by her husband or by her father, but regardless, she'd been abused. And so she automatically made a connection between what she had experienced through the abuse and God. And so she saw God as this kind of abusive father and didn't want anything to do with him. Men, we want those around us, those that we care the most about, those that we are devoted to, not only to see God, but to see us as a compassionate, loving, forgiving, and present Father. Not the standoffish, angry, or absentee. And that's something just to be aware of. Now, ladies, I want to talk to you for just a second. Obviously, how you show your devotion can very much vary depending on your situation. You know, if you're married, if you're with children, if you're single or single with children, widowed, empty nest, divorced, whatever it is. But women, you have a unique ability to meet others where they are. To meet others through helping and encouraging and building up others. By being a compassionate, empathetic, and hospitable presence. You also have a unique ability to demonstrate what it means to be strong and independent, to be a devout woman of God, for both young men and young women. I suppose old men and old women too. Now, if your devotion is to someone outside your home, which many of us that very well may be the case, whether it's a child, friend, whoever, one of the best ways you can show your devotion to those individuals is through a letter, a phone call, a visit. You can offer encouragement and build them up. It's a great way to show devotion. And sometimes that you can do that through social media if you're into that, but sometimes that personal touch of writing a letter or making an actual phone call goes a long, long way. Now I want to leave you with one final thought and two questions. The thought is this. The prodigal father and Jonathan, they showed unconditional, sacrificial, and steadfast devotion. This is the same kind of devotion that God shows us and really wants us to have towards one another. That's being devoted to one another. So the question that I have, first one I have for you is, where are you most devoted right now? And the second is, what are, if anything, sorry that's so small, what are, if anything, the daily challenges that you face that might prohibit you from showing godlike devotion to one another? See, folks, we are called to be God with skin on. That's what God's blueprint is all about. Okay, it's not about being perfect. It's not about being it's not about reaching these unattainable goals. It's about being the person that God created us to be. That's what that blueprint is all about. And it begins and it ends with our devotion to one another.